I'm Rick Johanson, and this is IronEcho Design. I want to revisit the watercolor texture effect inside of Inkscape. I had a video on this from a couple years ago, and the question comes up from time to time, such as from Nika Simon, could you do an update of this? The new version looks really different. It does. The first time you take a look at watercolor settings, you'll see this, a lot of arrows and turbulence, composite, displacement map. So I'll break it down for you and show you how easy it is to do first, so you can just get the effect to come out correct, and then we'll actually apply it to a piece of artwork. We'll make this moody London scene here with the clouds using the watercolor effect. All right, let's get started by setting up our page. You can go up to File, Document Properties. I'm on the A4 format, and the only change we'll make is changing it from Orientation Portrait. Click over to Landscape. This just gives us all the same scale, because for some reason it seems like if you go over to Circle, the watercolor effect does take into account the size of the object that you're using. So when I'm teaching how to use it, I like to start real small. We'll do just an oval. You can use any color you want. I happen to like blue because you can see the different striations better. Let's see how watercolor effect behaves on the first try. You can find it under Filters, Textures, down towards the bottom, Watercolor. And it vanishes, and you say, what's going on here? Don't understand it, moving on. But I'll show you how to fix it. The first place you go if it vanishes when you do watercolor effect is up to Object and open up your Fill and Stroke menu. Make sure you have a fill chosen. So I have fill blue and my stroke should be off. If that's all set, go down to Blur. Let's lower this down somewhere around 50%. It's okay if the center is empty. We're gonna fix that in the next part. Now go back to Filters and choose Filter Editor. Here's the menu that's pretty busy, but we're just gonna look at one at a time. The first one, Gaussian Blur. If you look down here, there's only one slider we can play with. You can move the bar itself or hit the plus minus. The next one is where most of the action is gonna happen, Turbulence. You wanna be on Fractal Noise for the type, and for the size, hit the plus and you can see how it cycles through the different versions of the effect, or you can just type in, let's do 0.1. Enter. Now we're seeing a lot more of the striations I was mentioning that I'm looking for, and we'll come back to this turbulence. For now, let's fill in the inside. You can find that on Displacement Map. So don't worry about composite, don't worry about color matrix. Click on Displacement Map. Again, you only have one bar, so keeping it simple. As I slide the bar, you can see, what is this? This is the watercolor effect swatch that Inkscape is using to render all of this. All you need to do is move that bar until you have the swatch completely inside your shape, right about there. I actually like the way this looks. I would stop here, but I do want to go back to Turbulence to troubleshoot because you might have something that doesn't look like this. Back to Turbulence. The size at 0.1 looks really good, but if you were playing around the bar and you got into the 3s, 3.0, it just becomes a scratchy mess. You can move the slider, but sometimes it's easier just to type in 0.1, enter, and we're back to this one that I like. You can also fine tune some of these water bleeds with the detail. If you take the detail to 1, it gets really blurry, but if you're at 5 or 6, 6 actually looks better. Why don't we stay with 6? We were on 5, it's very subtle change. 6 looks even better. And seed, I'm afraid to do because I like the way it looks, but I'll show you because I want you to know. It changes what the pop-up is saying, the starting number of the pseudo-random number generator. You know how it is with pseudo number generators. I'll click through a couple. I might Control Z back to that one I had. To recap, don't get lost in all the business here. Just do Gaussian Blur, Turbulence, and Displacement Map. Leave everything else alone. There is a key skill I want to highlight before we take this out to that London skyline and blend it all together. Go up to Edit Paths by Node. If you move this around, there's a black X, it's going to resample, which looks pretty cool when you do it, but you might lose part of the water bleed that you were looking for. I'll leave it right here. The way to get around that, interestingly enough, if you go to the selector tool, once you resize it, I'll hold Shift and Control to keep it in proportion. Once it's resized, then when you move it, it stays. You can still change the color if I go back to Fill and Stroke. But that's a tip I think you should know if you want to keep something that you found looks the way you want it. Otherwise, you really are at the mercy of whatever it renders when you put it into place. All right, so let's make our London skyline here. I got this source image from pexels.com. Once you download it, just drag it onto the Inkscape canvas. For image import type, I have embed, DPI from file, rendering none. Okay, there it is. And if you've never used this tool called Trace Bitmap, we're going to do the most basic setting. You can find it under Path, Trace Bitmap. For this example, you want to be on single scan, detection mode, brightness cutoff, keep speckles, smooth corners, and optimize all selected. What we're doing is we're going to create a vector version of this image based on the brightness. This looks too dark, so I'll change the slider down to 0.31 looks okay. Preview looks good, apply. And here's what we got. You can see the original, and this is the Trace Bitmap vector version. Delete that, and we'll put it onto our page. Here's another trick I don't think I did in the first video. I'm going to mask out the bottom here because I want my watercolor to really bleed and not see this squared off part. An easy way to do it is to create a rectangle over almost the whole picture. Change it to white, open our fill and stroke menu back up, and we'll put a gradient on that. What I'm doing is creating a mask. So I'll do full white, actually towards the middle. I can drag the direction so it fades into transparency. If you don't have this little bar, it's this tool right here, gradient tool. If you've never done masks, you might be saying, well, what is he doing? A mask, in the simplest terms, says whatever is white will be taken. Whatever is fading into transparency will not be taken. Click and drag over both the mask and the underlying image. When they're both selected, go to Object, Mask, Set Mask. And there it is. Now I can add my watercolor. I can keep copying the original, or you can make more. This time I won't do an oval. I'll make a random shape, and it should adopt the same settings I did over here. So we'll go to Filters, Texture, Watercolor. There you go. I can still tweak it though. Filters, Filter Editor, and I can play with that seed, that pseudo-random number generator. This looks good. Remember, if you want to lock it in, you have to resize it. I'll resize that. And you see how it looks good at the bottom here where the blend is, and this is a hard edge. One way to do it is do Control D, which is duplicate, and that creates two on top of each other. I can duplicate this one, bring it over here to fill in this edge. Should we do one more? Maybe we can use this one again. Control D, make it really big. And I probably did a time lapse there, but there you go. That is how you can do the watercolor effect. Tricky to learn, but once you get it down, there's a lot you can do with it. Have fun with it, and we'll see you next time.